in this episode of the Horror Headquarters. I don't know, I didn't think the gore was as bad as people are saying. Now that cat lady, she is one of the most underrated characters in this film. I can't even believe I'm saying this, but I think the ratings on IMDb for this film are 100% true. Hello there, it's been a long time since I've been doing an episode, but you know what? I'm back, and we're gonna dive right into episode 5. Now, if you guys can't tell by the title, this is all about Terrifier. Yes, I finally got myself to press play on this film. I've been putting it off for so long, because I've been hearing the gore is extremely horrible, that it's a lot to take in, and that it even makes people sick. Now, again, this is the first of many Terrifier films. I do plan on watching future ones, just a little bit of a spoiler of what's to come in the future. But while you guys are here, make sure you guys hit that follow button and rate us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you guys are listening on here. I would greatly appreciate it. It's what keeps me going. It's what tells Spotify that I'm a force to be reckoned with, and it really does make all the biggest difference. Thank you guys so much, and let's dive right into episode 5 and talk about this insane independent film. Now, Terrifier is a 2016 American slasher film that was written, edited, co-produced, and directed by Damien Leone. This is something that I have so much respect for, because as someone that creates my own films, that acts, creates the soundtrack, edits it, produces it, and directs it, and like does all the cinematography, I have a lot of respect for Damien Leone, because doing all that is a lot of work. So right off the bat, I just had to bring that up and say props to Damien Leone. Now, this film had a budget of about $35,000 to $55,000, which makes 100% sense, obviously being it's an independent film, and they don't usually have a lot of funding for independent films, at least from my experience. But this whole story is about a clown that creates massacres and falls to carve an entertaining story worthy of his wrath. Like, he loves killing people, he loves causing mayhem, and he looks extremely creepy. Now, this is a film, or let's say a series of films, that I've been hearing about so much, especially in the news, with Terrifier 3 releasing, people saying the gore was so much that people were hospitalized, people threw up, they left the previews early, and I'm like, come on, like, is it that insane? But I did watch a TikTok video of Terrifier 3, and it wasn't the film, it was people's reactions to one scene where, like, someone's getting their head bashed in, I think. Something to know about me, I don't like gore. I'm not a gore person. I like a little bit, but when it's over excessive and it's like ruining the plot and it's just making it a bloodbath, I'm not really a fan of those kind of films. I'm very, very particular. I like more psychological, thriller, mystery films, especially things that have to do with real life conspiracy theories and murder cases, stuff like that. So when I was introduced to Terrifier, I'm like, gore, alright, let's go for it. Hopefully the acting is good, hopefully the story is good. And I can proudly say that I think the acting was well above decent. Particularly from the cat lady who's in this film, she did a phenomenal job of embodying this really creepy character that thinks that her child is a doll, but at the same time, she has like this sweet undertone to her, and you can tell that she's suffering, that she's experienced a lot, and that she is a main character in this film. I personally look at her as a main character, but I will say the cast overall did a really good job of embodying the roles, especially the two girls playing the main characters in this film, including Tara Hayes and Victoria Hayes, played by Jenna Cannell and Samantha Scafidi. They actually look a lot like each other in real life. Like, literally search up both of those actresses. They look extremely similar to one another. And then, of course, there's Dawn, who plays like the drunken friend that's all about partying, and she's just really weird and kind of out of touch with reality. And she's, in a way, a free spirit that's kind of a little bit Coco, and that ends up being her own undoing, unfortunately. But I really enjoyed Tara's character. I wish she was on screen for longer. I wish she didn't die so early in the film. That kind of pissed me off, because that kind of acting is so rare, because it's a type of horror acting that you don't see a lot of today, where it's not over exaggerated, where it's not immediately terrified of a certain character. It's just a growing suspicion that continues to build over the film's progression. And I think she maintained that very well, but it escalated, especially when she was about to get murdered, and she felt that she was on the brink of death, but just kept outliving, like, past, I think, Art the Clown's expectations, because he was expecting her to be killed alongside her friend Dawn, but she outlived him for quite some time, but then she was murdered. Another aspect of this film that I really enjoyed was the setting and the still frames with the cinematography, how there wasn't a lot of first-person perspectives throughout the film, how it was mostly the camera kind of in the back of the room, and you're seeing the characters kind of work through a situation. Now, this isn't to say that there wasn't a really good camera work. Like, I actually really enjoyed the directing, I enjoyed the takes that were happening. It kind of made me reminiscent of my own film, Nightmare, where there's a couple of scenes where the camera is moving to kind of show what's happening around, while the other ones are all still frames. Now, I could be recalling this incorrectly, but this is my first impressions of the film, so don't attack me. But this, like, again, I'm not saying anything bad about the film. I think it was done very well in the cinematography aspect as well as that directing aspect. And I also loved the scene where Victoria, who is Tara's older sister, was hiding in kind of a closet, and you kind of just see the people looking out at the clown. I really enjoyed that take. I think it builds the suspension a lot. Another thing is there's not a lot of music in this film. I was expecting a lot more intense music, a lot more of an intense score to be happening, but there wasn't. And it's not that I was underwhelmed, I was just kind of expecting more from the score, but I think it allowed for the acting and kind of the setting of the entire film to kind of take over and have that horror aspect instead of the music kind of being a distraction in a way. Alright, let's talk about Art the Clown. This is another character such as Michael Myers, who is silent, who does not speak, who has no voice, and they kind of express the horror aspect through expressions, through movements, through the actions that they do, and we get all three of those from Art the Clown because he massacres people, he gives people really weird, creepy looks, just like the Killer Clowns of 2016. Flashback to the 5th episode of Season 1. This is the 5th episode of Season 2, and we're still talking about clowns. I am just realizing that, and that's just coming back to me right now. If I'm recalling correctly, I do think Killer Clowns of 2016 was the 5th episode of Season 1. But regardless, I don't like clowns, and that's another thing that you should know about me. I absolutely despise clowns. Like, I can't even get the words out properly without stuttering, because if you guys have listened to that 2016 episode that I made a year ago about the Killer Clowns, you would know exactly why I'm so horrified of clowns. So I would definitely give that episode a listen. You guys will find that in Season 1. Just scroll all the way down, and you will find this exact episode that I am referencing. Now, being an IMDb geek, I always look at the trivia behind each film, and I loved that when I saw one trivia stating that the actor that played Art the Clown would stand outside and like be in character while he was on a break and just scare the shit out of people that were passing by or in the distance, and I thought that was hysterical. I also found out that the ambulance that passes by as Dawn is on the phone in the car was not scripted, that it was an actual ambulance that was passing by, but I didn't even know that, and the fact that the ambulance was there at that moment, I'm like, okay, that's a paid actor right there. They knew what was happening. Like, they manifested that, and it's kind of crazy. I think it's really difficult to play a villain that doesn't speak. Being that in my new film Visions, you guys might see a character like that. I'm kind of doing some promo right now, I'm sorry. But as someone that has done a character like that, obviously not to the extent of Art the Clown, it is extremely, extremely difficult to make out that horror feel, to give a film the aspect that you want to come across for the audience to watch, because obviously the music does help a little bit, but it all comes down to how well the acting is, how well the facial expressions are, the movements, the way you walk, the way you carry yourself, the way you execute someone, the way you're massacring someone, like the facial expressions, the movements, all of this stuff comes into play. It's the physical and the mental aspects of a character that make them so creepy. Like with Michael Myers, he's very stiff, he breathes heavily, and he kind of massacres in a way that you're not seeing these facial expressions, so I definitely think his character was a lot more complicated in that way. But regardless, props to the actor, which I believe his name is David Howard Thornton. Yes, good for him, and I do believe he's in all the other films, so I'm excited to see more of him. But let's get to the main subject of this film, which is the gore. Now, going into this film, I knew I was going to see gore. I was waiting for it. I was anticipating. I'm like, okay, when is it going to come? What should I expect? Should I be overwhelmed by this? Should I be underwhelmed? With the first scene in the pizza kitchen, when he, like, basically, pardon my French, took a shit all over the place. It was so nasty. And then the employee comes out and then sees the manager with his head cut off and basically carved into a pumpkin. It was giving me Halloween vibes for sure, because Michael Myers kind of does that in like the 2018 version, I believe it was, where he kills a police officer and his head like has candles in it. And I'm like, yeah, that's not creepy at all. And then the infamous clown appears and murders the employee, which was expected, obviously. But the story just continues to build. We see more still frames. That's when actually the ambulance scene comes up, where the trivia for IMDb comes in when Dawn's sitting in her car and an ambulance passes by. That's because on the news she's hearing that there was a massacre at a pizza place, actually the one that they were just at. And let's just talk about Dawn for a second, kind of swaying, but she was so freaking dumb. Obviously, that's how her character, I'm hoping, is supposed to be portrayed. Because when she took a picture on the lap of Art the Clown, I'm like, you're so freaking stupid. He's gonna kill you. He's literally gonna massacre you. You are on his red list, on the top of the list, for making fun of him. Everyone has a villain story. Maleficent, Hades, Cruella, all of them have villain stories, and it's because of the way they were brought up. It's because of the way they were treated by society. Now, am I saying that Terrifier's actions were excused? Absolutely freaking not. But I would love to see more of his backstory, kind of the way he became this clown. I don't know if Terrifier 2 or Terrifier 3 does that, but we shall see. But going back to the gore, that chainsaw scene is still like aching in my head. I literally just had to take my glasses off, because just thinking about that scene gives me a huge headache, and it was so nasty, and I was not expecting it at all. I'm like, there's no way, because like he wanted to use different things. He wanted to use like a hand saw, like an actual hand saw, where, you know, and then he took out the chainsaw and he turns it on and he just starts cutting her in half, and she's alive all the way up until the end. And I'm like, there's no freaking way, there's no possible way that you're cutting through someone's body like that and they don't go into freaking shock or completely die. But carrying on, we have the scene where he murders Tara. I kind of forgot how. I think he smashes her head, or just basically stabs her 1,000 times everywhere. I think it's that one. I'm kind of forgetting. It's kind of like a fever dream, this film. This film felt like the biggest fever dream. I don't care what anyone says. This film felt like a fever dream, because I'm struggling to recall anything, and I really don't want to watch it again, because the gore was kind of horrible, but not to the extent that I think people were explaining. I think a lot of people overhyped the gore, because the gore, again, was bad. It was horrific. It was terrible, but not to the extent that people were saying it was. Because then later in the film, we have him like stab also Tara's sister Victoria like 1,000 times. We have him like beat the heck out of the exterminator and like this guy that's like the janitor of a building. It gets nasty. But I had 100% confidence that Tara was gonna die, being that how many times she was stabbed, being the stuff that she had seen. I'm like, this is gonna not only traumatize her, it's gonna eat her up from the inside out. But somehow she survived. Somehow she survived. I don't know how she survived, but she survived. And she is the final girl of this film. Which, if you don't know what final girl means, it's kind of like Laurie Strode in Halloween, and it's like Sydney from Scream. These are final girls, people that are remaining at the end of a film that are still alive. But in terms of Victoria's character, I think it was a lot different, being that her character is completely changed. It's morphed as a result, kind of like with Laurie Strode in the newest version of Halloween, not the horrible 2 films following it, but Halloween, I believe 2016 or 2018, it's one of those years. The way she was traumatized, the way she couldn't let go from the past, and she was constantly training for Michael's return. I feel like Tara was like that, only she was physically damaged more than mentally damaged, and she was a completely different person because, as we see in the beginning of the film, she does something that's kind of out of character for her, but at the same time, the person deserved it because of the way that they were talking about her. That was kind of poetic justice because watching in the beginning of the film, I felt a little bit bad, but then towards the end of the film, like, oh no, that reporter got everything that she deserved. Her interviewer reporter, she got every single thing she deserved, and I was so happy. I'm like, you know what? You go, girl. I don't care. Do it again. I don't really care. All right, let's see. We talked about the story, we talked about the acting, the clowns, the cat lady, the cinematography, the gore, the final girl, a little bit about the ending. I want to talk a little bit about the bodies remaining in the film. Now, when they're turned over to this guy to kind of determine the cause of death, that's when he discovers that Art the Clown is still alive because Art the Clown basically fakes his death. I thought it was real. I'm like, oh, he just killed himself. Nope, it was all a prop, it was all a fake, and he's still alive. He ends up killing this body examiner. It's kind of like the autopsy of Jane Doe, where the people that are examining the body end up dying. And then there was another body, obviously, in the room, and it was, I believe, Tara, because her face was smashed in. But then the officers are like, well, there's a couple more bodies that we have to go get. And I believe the number they gave was either 2 or 3. And being how many people have died, we have the exterminator that died, which is 1. We have the janitor, which is 2. We have what's her name? The freaking girl, the drunk one. Dawn. We have Dawn, so that's 3. We have the cat lady, which is 4. And I think that's all of them, unless I'm missing one. But they did not say 4 bodies are still need to be recovered. They said 2 or 3. So that means one of those people is still alive. I don't know who it is, but I'm excited to watch that second film to find out. And I think that's really good for the franchise and especially for the creator of this film because he's creating that anticipation because he doesn't explicitly say who it is that's still remaining. So that's kind of open to, conspiracy theories. It's open to the people that are examining this film back and forth because there actually are a lot of people that are constantly examining the Terrifier films, connecting them. And I'm curious to know what they would have thought before they watched the second or third film because I've not watched either of those. I don't know what happened, so we'll see. Now, I can't recall if I touched on the setting of this film at all, but I do love the setting of the film. I love how it started off in a kind of a pizza parlor in a very public place, and then it got to kind of the outskirts of a certain area where their car breaks down and they can't drive it, and they're just kind of stranded in the middle of nowhere. And they go into this random building that's really nasty. There's rats everywhere. There's just a lot wrong with this building, and you can tell. And then that's when all hell breaks loose because, and it's where a majority of the film takes place in the end, which I think is really good. They didn't have a lot of back and forth, which I think is something a lot of horror films this day struggle with because they struggle to maintain not only the setting but the energy of the setting. Like if they're constantly switching it for no apparent reason and they're not building anticipation and there's a lot of unanswered questions, then they're failing at that specific horror aspect. But I think Terrifier did a really good job of kind of portraying this film in a way that takes advantage of everything of the setting, the cinematography, the acting, the costuming, the gore, and then the ending. And I hate to say it, I think the IMDb reviews are very accurate. I think there's like a 5.4 out of 10 on IMDb. I would probably give this film a 5 or a 6. And I give that rating in the most respected way. So that 6 out of 10, that's a 3-star film. But it was really good. But would I watch it again? Probably not. Because it just dragged a little bit. But I will say for an independent film that was done with a lot of work, and I can tell a lot of work went into this film, as someone that creates films and acts in them, I give props to the director. I give that director a 4 or 4.5 out of 5 because they did phenomenal in the script, they did phenomenal in the setting. As I've stated, like the plot was really good. Just wish it was longer, but again, it's an indie film. It was 2016. There's always room for growth, and that makes me even more excited for Terrifier 2 and for number 3. Even though number 3, I've been hearing a lot of mixed reviews. I've been hearing that the gore is absolutely disgusting, that it's very, you know, like unnecessary. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see when I watch those two. I don't know when, because like I said, I hate clowns and I hate gore, but I think this was a really great experience and it made me appreciate the independent genre to a new level, especially when it comes to horror. And I'm gonna end it right there. I appreciate you guys all for listening. Again, I really enjoyed talking about this episode. I enjoyed you guys sticking around. If you guys enjoyed this, please, again, make sure to hit that follow button, rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at the Horror Headquarters. Your guys' support truly means a lot to me. I am always constantly working to make this podcast the best that I can make it, to always incorporate new additions, to hopefully have some guests on the podcast soon. I have some ideas. I have some ideas for future episodes, and I know I've been lagging a lot. The reason being there's just a lot going on in my life. There's a lot going on in the world, obviously, but it's a good busy. Like, I'm a good busy, but also just going through a lot mentally. But, a lot's going on in the personal life of Hassan Shamu, who is the person you guys hear talking about this podcast, the kid that fell in love with horror at the age of 13 for no apparent reason. I still don't know what film clicked with me at the age of 13. I'm still trying to recall what it was. So as soon as I figure that out, I guess I'll let you guys know. But until next time, you guys, thank you again. I will see you guys hopefully soon. I'm going to try to get some more episodes rolled out next week to kind of make up for this delay in episodes. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure to take that poll on Spotify. Make sure to drop any comments, questions. Make sure to DM us any movie recommendations. If you guys have anything you want me to watch and kind of review, I'm more than happy to do so because I love, of course, watching horror films. So please let me know in the comments, messaging us at the Horror Headquarters on Instagram. But until next time, tread very lightly and pray for forgiveness. Midnight hour is approaching.